How did it start? My husband started it all, bringing home whatever virus he had caught from his schoolyard job. He had gotten sick by Friday night, and on Saturday evening, I became his live-in nurse. Now, I would like to think I'm an excellent wife, but my husband becomes a man-child, and I didn't want to get sick myself, so I may not have been the most helpful to him in certain areas. I also wasn't up to date on this whole COVID-19 thing, so I didn't think it was a big deal. Monday night came, and he was still in bed. He wasn't doing too well. I took my daughter to school, I went to class, and during my break, I came home to check on my hubby and make sure he was alive and well. Monday nights are my later nights, so I needed to make sure that my family would have dinner. And this week it was my night to cook, but as it got closer to the time for me to start preparing dinner, I started to feel tired. The fatigue hit me out of nowhere. So I decided to rest a bit instead, and I sat on the couch next to the sickly patient, and then my throat got sore. I started to feel like crap fast. I gave my husband this ice cold, piercing look, and I said, "You gave this to me," under my breath, but loud enough for him to hear. "What?" he replied. "You gave this to me," I repeated, a little more at his pace because I needed him to understand, and he's sick. Well, this conversation was brief and it ended with him trying to laugh but coughing with each attempt, and me wanting to verbally assault the culprit behind my sore throat, but I couldn't because I already started to feel sick. You know the feeling, right? Where you can't quite put your finger on it, but you know an illness has entered your body. Needless to say, I did not make it to class that night. But I had to push through to pick up my daughter from the babysitter, who happens to be my mother. And I decided to wrap myself up in my California winter wear, grab my car keys, my wallet, my gate card, and convince my husband that he was too ill to go on a joyride. And then out the door I went. I walked down the stairs. I went to the parking lot. I jumped in our new white car. Her name is Diana. Like Princess Di. I loved her. Anyway, I sat in the car for a few seconds, just thinking about how I couldn't afford to get sick. And off I went. I made it to my mom's, and she is up to date on this whole COVID-19 thing, and she's very serious, very meticulous about keeping her household virus-free. I mean, you would think that she was running a government agency or an elderly care facility the way she keeps it sanitized there. And this was way before the pandemic. So imagine what it was like growing up there. My daughter gets in the car and she starts asking me all of these questions right away. Where's Dad? Is he still at home? What are we having for dinner? What's wrong with you? Do you have class tonight? On and on and on. And I can normally combat the interrogations, but tonight I just wasn't up to self-defense. So I waited for a brief moment of silence, and then I answered 3 of her questions. Dad is at home, I don't feel well, and we'll stop somewhere for dinner. So the week went on, and by Friday we were all sick. My husband was starting to slowly get over whatever bug he had picked up, but me and my daughter, we seemed to be developing a new symptom with every passing day. And so by Sunday, my little family found ourselves in urgent care. And don't worry though, the doctor was convinced that we did not have coronavirus. But we did have to make a pit stop before we got home. She had recommended some home remedies, so we need to get the things for it. We get to the Walmart around the corner from our apartment, and there's this crowd of paranoid people grabbing things from the shelves and giving other people death glares if they were putting the last of an item in their cart. And so we're walking down the water aisle, and there's 2 bottles left. My husband goes to get them for our sickly family, and me and my daughter follow behind with the basket. And my kid coughs. Now, you know that we don't have coronavirus, but the lady passing us, she has no clue. And so she clenches her basket and she tries to cover herself up and cover the items in her cart with her cardigan. And as she scurries off down the aisle, my husband holds me and he assures me that people are just funny. And I assured him that I am just crazy, which is why he was holding me. So the stress. Well, the day the pandemic started, I was homesick. Tay returned to work and he gave me a call on his noon break. And he was calling to let me know that the school site he worked at was going to be closing down for a couple of weeks. But not to worry because the company that he worked for would CC24 them, which means that they would still get paid even when they're not working. We ended our call. I know I was told not to worry about income, but that was all I could worry about because I'm a full-time student, unemployed. We have bills, a child, a new car, business ventures. Tay returned home and we all sat in the living room discussing our non-eventful days. And I took time trying to explain to my daughter that she'd be out of school for a few weeks, so she'd have to do schoolwork from home until spring break. And all she heard was, no school and spring break. All I kept thinking about was how was I going to get my schoolwork done with a sick kid and a bored husband at home. The vibrations from Tay's phone could be heard over the sound of our television. And he picked it up. He checked it. I looked at him and waited for him to say something. What? I don't know. But he didn't. He got up and he went to our bedroom. He closed the door. And I sat in the living room to give him some space because I kind of felt what it was and I knew it wasn't good, so I wanted to let him gather his thoughts. And after about 20 minutes or so, I went in, I opened the door, and my husband was sitting on the bed staring at his phone. I asked him what happened. And he hesitated. Just a quick pause before telling me that he had received an email. From who, I asked. My job, he replied. But what did it say? And I asked, already knowing the answer. They aren't going to pay us. We are not going to get paid during this time. And then we sat in silence. I don't know for how long, but it was long enough for me to watch the raindrops race down our window through the open blinds. And I listened to the sound of splashing water from the car tires passing the park across the street. And while I was looking at how gloomy this gloomy weather matched so perfectly with this gloomy day, Tay didn't notice any of it. No, his eyes were glued to the calendar on the wall. The large calendar that marked all of the paydays and the bill due dates, the wedding deadlines. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but Tay and I are newlyweds. Not quite 3 months in yet when this started. And we haven't quite had a honeymoon stage yet. You know, we're a blended family, and each of us are trying to adjust to the new family dynamic. A wedding. We haven't had a wedding yet. We got legally married in a quick I do ceremony with 30 of our ultra close family and friends. And my father-in-law, he was the officiant. I didn't wear a dress. We didn't exchange bands, just rings. Because there was no reason to when we were going to have a huge wedding 6 months from then. Which is now 3 months from now. I turned my attention back to him. I saw the fear in his eyes. I felt the shame he was trying so hard to hide. Because he's our family's sole provider, and he wasn't going to be able to provide. I held my tears back and tried to be a good wife, soothe over the situation, because I knew that this was going to last longer than 2 weeks. Because by now I was up to date on COVID, and I knew it was going to last longer. How long, I don't know. Our wedding. How are we going to make this month's deadlines? We can't. So after a few more moments of exchanged silence, we decided to call our venue and vendors and ask if we could push back our wedding date. We didn't exactly have another date in mind. We just knew that we couldn't have our early summer wedding in 2020. We couldn't exactly make another date because what if that one got ruined? God. The text. So many texts that we sent because we were too embarrassed to talk to anyone over the phone or in person. Family and friends, the wedding party. Oh, God, our huge wedding party. Out of town guest. We didn't want anyone to hear or see our grief. I mean, when you get asked, how's the newlywed life? You want to be able to say, it's amazing. It's the best thing that ever happened to us. But we haven't been able to say any of that. Not honestly, anyway. So, I guess in quarantine, it's been
a road.
It's been a road, but I'd have to say we've been able to communicate better.
Yeah.
We've learned each of our communicating styles.
Yeah, our love languages.
Yeah. And we've been able to withstand being newlyweds.
Yeah.
Stuck in a house.
Quarantine.
During a quarantine.
We literally have, we didn't go through a honeymoon phase at all.
At all.
We've been just hit. And you know what? I can honestly say that God has sustained us throughout this whole time. Because there's been days where she's wanted to choke me and days where I wanted to just throw her down our stairs. But God has sustained us. God has truly sustained us through it all. While balancing a child.
Yes.
So, yeah, because many of you know, I married into a family with a child. I have no biological children. So, learning how to not only be a leader of a family, a husband, and a stepdad at the same time, I also had to learn how to balance 2 women in one household by myself.
It's been interesting.
Really interesting.
But we are communicating during quarantine,
yeah.
And through our communication, we've been able to figure out how to express the frustrations we felt with the things that hit us in the beginning, like not having income.
Man. Yeah, really not having income. I literally had to fall back on what I knew, what I first loved. I literally was just sitting around and I was like, what can I do for income? So I literally started baking again. I'm a pastry chef. So I literally made rent 2 times over with just baking. So I can honestly thank God for that because, man, if it wasn't for that, then...
Our kitchen has smelled delightful during quarantine. But that is how we were able to get through
And I'm
our
still
income
baking.
situation. So it's been going well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, and then of course we got a stimulus after, so that helped a lot too.
Man.
But
much.
it took so much stress off of us being financially worried about how we were going to do just the everyday basic living. How do you pay the rent? How do we keep a car? How do we keep food in the house?
And the crazy part about it is, in the midst of the quarantine, we had to buy a new car.
Yeah. Well, we bought it right before.
Hey, we were quarantined 2 weeks before the quarantine. So, in the midst of the quarantine, we ended up having to buy a new car.
True.
So,
we haven't made enough income to keep our wedding for this year, however.
yeah. But
So-
thank God, because I don't really care. We're already married. But we pushed it back to 2021.
Yes.
Which honestly has been like a sigh of relief for us, because, man, our wedding was literally June 5th of this year. And we got legally married in December, and it literally has just been a whirlwind. So we literally have just been like, thank you, Jesus, thank you, Jesus, thank you, Jesus, because there's no way that we would have been able to do anything if our wedding still would have happened.
Yeah, we just wouldn't have the money to make the deadlines at the beginning of this pandemic. So we push it to next year, give everyone a chance to prepare. Also, we just have a lot of pregnant bridesmaids that we found out about.
True.
So
Everyone is pregnant.
it's going well. This is right now at this point in the pandemic compared to the beginning of the pandemic. We're doing better.
Yeah, we're at a happy medium.
We really are. There's been so many blessings hidden within this craziness.
Yeah.
And it's been beautiful.
I think we were just looking at this quarantine all in the wrong way.
Yeah.
God really had to just sit me down as a man, as a husband, as a father, and allow me to understand what was going on with this quarantine. He pretty much gave me time back, pretty much, to do things that I've been wanting to do for a long time that I couldn't do because I'm always working. So yeah, like I got back into writing, and I just wrote this amazing song.
Oh my gosh.
And and I'm baking again, like that, and that's all I really want to do. So God is providing big time.
Yes.